my God-loving Americans out there, good afternoon. I'm just gonna wait here and see how many people are able to show up and participate in this live stream. We'll be talking today with respects to Uranium 1, the Clinton Foundation, George Soros, John Podesta Group, and Calico Resource. I left a detailed description of what we're going to cover today, a brief coverage of what I'm going to be talking today on the Resurrect the Republic radio show, and then tomorrow I'll also be talking on Truth Talk Radio with Brian Lang. I'm gonna be extremely fortunate to be on both radio shows today and tomorrow. So for those that want to follow or unable to follow today, they can hear me today or they can hear me tomorrow. But most of all, I want you to help me circulate this information to all our military members, past and current men and women that served in our military, because I believe this information is extremely vital for them, and especially their families. As I always stated, I have nothing to gain, and I don't make a profit from this. This research belongs to the American people and not to me. So I want to have as many Americans out there that are willing to support me to circulate this information as far and wide as possible. So then within the brief descriptions that I wrote here, one of the things that everybody keeps talking about with respect to the Hammonds, why aren't the Hammonds free, and how did the de facto government were able to get away with what they did to the Hammonds? Not just that, but our patriots. We have to understand the criminal element within this de facto government, and why I call it de facto is because these people are acting lawlessly. They're not acting constitutionally. As you will see, I'm going to tie up the names with respect to the tiers. And what I mean by the tiers is the states, like Sally Amanda Marshall, Stacey Beckerman, Anna Akins, Anna J. Brown, Greg Walden, Earl Blumenauer, Ron Wyden, Jeff Merkley, Greg Walden, Ellen Rosenblum, and Cliff Bentz. I mean, all these criminals, not that just belong to the American Bar Association, but they also belong to the Lewis and Clark Law School, in which I've always called it the Lewis and Clark Law School, or the criminal element of the Lewis and Clark Law School that comes out of there. Basically lawyers. And these lawyers become judges, and these judges become state politicians, or they just skip from being a judge and go into politics. As you know, as you noticed, or if you ever noticed, or if you ever done any research, you'll see that most of our corrupt politicians are lawyers. I didn't say it. I challenge everybody to prove me wrong and let the evidence speak for itself. Also, you have Barack Hussein Obama as a lawyer. You got Hillary Clinton as a lawyer. James Comey as a lawyer. Loretta Lynch as a lawyer. So all these criminals are well connected with the criminals within a de facto government in Oregon. Now, we have to understand a couple things that these criminals have over us. One, they're well funded by us for them to defraud us. Two, through the Oregon Legislative Investment Council, they profit through their hedge funds, stocks, shares, bonds, and earmarks, all tied to three things: minerals, water, and land. I didn't say that. That's what their hedge funds say. These hedge funds also are tied to the land exploration satellite. This land exploration satellite is what connects George Soros and Harry Reid. This is why Harry Reid, George Soros, Kate Brown, Ron Wyden, Jeff Merkley, Greg Walden, Earl Blumenauer, Cliff Bentz, Andy Bentz are trying to cover up with the help of Les Zates, Scott McAllister, and Marissa, and who is it? King Williams, Marissa Williams, or something like that. they control the media. They don't tell the Oregonians or the American people that these criminals have investments in also the land exploration satellite. And what the land exploration satellite does, it pins all the minerals all through the Steens Mountain and everywhere else across in every federal or state national monument. This is how the de facto government goes and steals the land, the property from all Americans. And if you noticed why the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, went after several military veterans and stole their house for profit, very rare do the American people want to talk about that. But these criminals went ahead and stole land from from an old veteran, and they laughed about it and how they defrauded this veteran and how they got the land on pennies on the dollar. Now, how many Americans are aware that these criminals have money invested and through their hedge funds and earmarks and campaign contributions, where they create laws to go ahead and steal people's land? And this is a prime example, not just the veteran, but also the Hammonds. This is why the Hammonds' land was being stolen. It was stolen not just for the uranium, but there's also gold, copper, silver, all through the Steens Mountain. And I'm not just going to emphasize on the Hammonds' land, but the entire Steens Mountain is so rich that just on Steens Mountain alone can take America out of national debt. Now, this doesn't benefit the corrupt politicians nor George Soros to tell you that. And this is why they have to buy Scott Callister and Les Zates. I mean, they have to skew the narrative. They got to keep you dumb. They got to dumb down America. Same thing like Operation Mockingbird. You control the media. You basically manipulate the truth, and the corrupt politicians and the criminals like George Soros get away from stealing your water, land, and minerals. So these are the same criminals that went ahead and took the uranium and gave it to Russia. Now, if we all go back, thank God, to WikiLeaks that validated the research that I was doing, we understand that Robert Mueller took uranium, which is highly enriched uranium, to Russia. Now, this to me is an act of treason with the help of James Comey and Loretta Lynch. So they were extremely and well informed. I've been saying this for over a year and a half. Now, what do you think that would happen to that uranium when it gets to the hands of our enemies, like Russia, like Iran, Iraq, ISIS, let's not forget Benghazi? This uranium is being transferred in multiple countries, in multiple groups, terrorist groups. And yet we send our military to go overseas to fight for our freedoms. Yet how are they fighting for our freedoms if these criminals within the de facto government and part of the American military industrial complex is arming our enemies? Then why the hell are we sending our military overseas? Who are they actually fighting for? Not for who, but for. And for what? So what happened in Vegas, and I have to go back to the Vegas, was a transfer of guns to ISIS. It went bad, no different than Fast and Furious and what happened in Benghazi. All right, this criminals element within a de facto government are going to do anything possible to skew the narrative through the use of George Soros and Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird manipulating the media. MSNBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, the Oregonian, the Blue Mountain Eagle. I mean, these criminals have all these medias in their pockets. So do you honestly expect to get the truth out? Or would they be willing to take the truth out and inform the American people what's really happening? So all those minerals that they're actually stealing and the lands that they're stealing, it belongs to the American people. So we send our military over to fight for freedom, yet when it happens here, we do nothing. This was why when you take the oath of office, it says, what do you call it, enemies, foreign and domestic. This is why our founding fathers stated domestic. It wasn't created or fabricated or altered into the oath. It was there for a reason, because we have traitors within our republic. These are the prime traitors that are perpetuating treason upon the American people, not just upon our military, but our children and our grandchildren. This is what the American people need to understand. For over a year and a half, I've been trying to somehow explain it or articulate the information where the American people are able to grasp and say, and start questioning these criminals like, Harry Reid, and even his son Rory Reid, Leaf Reid, even Republican politicians like John McCain, Mitch McConnell, who else is here? Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Mark Amoti from Nevada. These criminals, Dean Heller, another criminal Republican from Nevada. These criminals do not give a rat's ass about you. All they care about is how they can enrich themselves from you, your tax dollars, your minerals, your water, and your land. This is why it's so hard for me when somebody says that our military went overseas to fight for freedom. But did he actually fight for freedom? Or did he actually fight for the military-industrial complex and for people like George Soros, Barack Hussein Obama, Henry Kissinger, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers? Because at the end of the day, these are the criminals that have money tied into the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Department of EPA, the Department of Agriculture. You don't have to take my word for it, just research it. This is why the patriots are all lawfully incarcerated, because they stood for what was right, for the Hammonds, God-loving Americans. They didn't do anything wrong. All the Hammonds want to do is ranch. Why is it so difficult for any American to accept that the Hammonds, all they wanted to do is ranch, and that you have amazing people like the Bundys and the rest of the patriots, or the rest of the Americans that participated with the Bundys in saving the Hammonds' land against this criminal element within the de facto government? Why do you think Kate Brown wants to disarm the Oregonians? I mean, has anybody sat down and logically thought about why Kate Brown wants to disarm the Oregonians? There's two reasons why they want to disarm the Oregonians. One, because they want to bring the UN into Harney County, where the criminals of David Ward and Stephen E. Grassley, and who I forgot the other two commissioners, Nichols, and one other commissioner. There's two other corrupt commissioners in Harney County. They're well aware of what they're doing, and they're going to set up the Oregonians, especially the people in Harney County, where the UN's going to roll in. And there's one reason why. Not just to steal your minerals, but to bring illegal immigrants from overseas. You'll see it, and it's going to happen. Because why? Because they were in the board, the committees. In these committees, they sat down knowing what they were going to do. But most of the Oregonians would not sit down or participate or read what's happening in these committees. Now, Stephen E. Grassley and David Ward can't do it by themselves. They need the help of Kate Brown, Ellen Rosenblum, the corrupt DA, Anna Akins and Anna J. Brown to cover it up in the de facto kangaroo court. And then you have Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley and Greg Walden and Earl Blumenauer writing de facto laws. So, when you American people start waking up and realizing what these criminals are doing, would you blame them if they get their pitchforks and their guns and they go after these criminals? I couldn't. I wouldn't. If anything, I would applaud them for what they're doing, or for what they would do. This is why Kate Brown wants to go ahead and disarm the Oregonians. And it's up to the Oregonians just to make the connection. It's time for the Oregonians to rise. Not just for them, but for their children and their grandchildren. And for those Oregonians that have family in the military, it's time for you to get a reality check. It's time for you to start questioning these criminals and their motives. Because as I stated before, I have nothing to gain out of this. All I'm trying to do is educate you. I have not received $1 from the Patriot movement. I have not received $1 from the Hammonds or the Bundys or any political prisoner. This is about this is about America. This is about our republic. And I don't want any fame. This is one of the reasons why I decided to step back and just allow the things to happen what's happening. And go into the trenches of where the truth is. And the truth is that the Hammonds lost their land because these criminals wanted the uranium underneath their land. And yet, knowing what we know now, not just me, but the public laws that they passed, in which they allocated $750 million of taxpayers' money for the contamination of uranium in Steens Mountain, which was signed by Bill Clinton in 2000. But the most crazy thing about that is that they included the military, such as the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, the Coast Guard, and I believe I don't know if I said the Marines, but I'm leaving one branch out. But nonetheless, with respect to the contamination of uranium, and they added the Steens Mountain agricultural in this bill. So why would they set aside $750 million for what? For what purpose? And on top of it, remember what I told you about uranium, which is U-235, U-238, U-238, and non-depleted uranium is still radioactive, and which can cause cancer to your pancreas, to your lung and liver. Well, that was all in that bill. And the reason why I'm telling you is because you won't get most of this information from the media. If the media would just say, hey, the Hammonds' land was stolen because uranium won, the Clinton Foundation, John Podesta, James Comey, Robert Mueller, and Loretta Lynch already had a deal with George Soros and Harry Reid in taking that uranium. And not that we want the uranium, but now we're going to create other mining corporations, or we'll merge other mining corporations like Calico Resource with Barrick Gold Inc. And by the way, Vail, Oregon, you guys knew, and I told you guys 2 years ago of what they were going to do in Vail. And what's happening in Vail, go back to my old videos. They're stealing the gold from the people of Oregon. The people in that county. That's your minerals in which they're stealing. But nobody wants to talk about that. Or people just forgot about that. So this is no secret. Stephen E. Grassi, matter of fact, was a ringleader behind what was going on with Cliff Bentz and Andy Bentz. So this is not a surprise, and this is not a secret. The American people knew, because I informed most of the American people. I informed most of the Oregonians. And what's going to happen in Deschette, and it's one of the reasons why they want to go at Grant County, which is why they're going after Sheriff Palmer. And all these criminal elements are tied to George Soros and Barrick Gold Inc., Calico Resource, Uranium One, the Clinton Foundation, the Democratic Party, which is DNC. This is why I continue to say what I say, because I can back it up with all the resources and all the information, and even the information that's coming out with Alex Jones, that came out finally. And well, he came out a couple of times, and now he pushed the agenda. Lou Dobb also pushed the agenda. But how come Lou Dobb or Alex Jones haven't tried to interview Les Zates or Scott Acosta and talk about the narrative what they were writing for Blue Mountain Eagle or the Oregonian or Malheur Enterprise and the corruption within their agencies or newspaper agencies? Why don't we hold these criminals accountable? Why don't we interview these criminals on how they played a role behind the theft of the Hammonds' land and the theft of the uranium, or the transfer of uranium going to our enemies? Why don't we talk about all that? It's time for the Oregonians to apply the pressure. It's time for the Oregonians to go to Hannity and say, you know what, you got to interview Scott Acosta, Les Zates, and Marissa Williams, all affiliated with the Oregonian, the Blue Mountain Eagle, and Malheur Enterprise, in which they skewed their narrative. Why did they have to lie? Why did they have to incite violence from the de-facto government that was perpetrated against the political prisoners and the assassination of Lavoy Finnegan? So it's up to you, Oregon. and all the Oregonians, because at the end of the day, they're stealing your guns, you're stealing your minerals, you're stealing your water, and they're stealing your land. And at the same time, you're sending your men and women overseas to fight for freedom when these are the criminals that are transferring weapons and uranium to our enemies. At the same time, profiting from this transfer through their hedge funds, earmarks, share stocks, and bonds through the Oregon Legislative Investment Council. And for the next 2 or 3 days, I will be preaching about this. I have the opportunity to go on Truth Live Radio with Brian Lang, and also Resurrect the Republic, and get as many people, inform as many people as you can, military men and women and their families. Let them know that I'm going to be there and I'm going to talk about this and that I have the evidence to prove it. Matter of fact, especially the family of Benghazi, the ones that had to lost their lives. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about them being awake to the truth, finding out what really happened. You ain't going to get it from the de facto government. Don't expect the de facto government to come and tell you, you know what, your son and daughter, lost their lives because we unlawfully were arming our enemies with uranium and weapons and ammo and money. You honestly think that the de facto government is going to come and tell you the truth? Or anybody, or a general, or an officer. You think they're going to come and tell you the truth of what really happened? They have to lie because they got to keep their job. So now they're in a big fight between morals, values, and principle versus their job and keeping their mouth shut. But see, I am very blessed that I am able to talk and convey this message to our military. And with the power of your keyboard and your mouse, you are able to share this information and give it to the military. And let our men and women to stand down to any war and let them conduct their research. Because it'll be foolish from our behalf to wage any war against any country when this de facto government's arming our enemies. How many more body bags need to come into America from our fallen men and women? And how many tears, how many families have to shed tears because of these criminals? And I'm not happy, it hurts me. But I'm not happy. It tears me apart to know the truth. And all I want you is to help me get this message out. Because at the end of the day, all we have is the truth. And the truth for our children and our grandchildren, our republic, our constitution, our Federalist Papers, our Bill of Rights, our military. They deserve the truth. They need to know the truth. And they should know the truth. So America, I just want to say thank you for your support. For those that support me directly and indirectly. And continue, to share all these live stream videos. Past and current and future videos. Because at the end of the day, the more we are informed, the more Americans we wake up, the better off we are as a republic. So God bless us all and take care. With Brian Lang. I'm going to be extremely fortunate to be on both radio shows today and tomorrow. So for those that want to follow or unable to follow today, they can hear me today or they can hear me tomorrow. But most of all, I want you to help me circulate this information to all our military members, past and current. To all our God-loving Americans out there, good afternoon. I'm just going to wait here and see how many people are able to show up and participate in this live stream. We'll be talking today with respects to Uranium 1, the Clinton Foundation, George Soros, John Podesta Group, and Calico Resource. I left a detailed description of what we're going to cover today. A brief coverage of what I'm going to be talking today on the Resurrect the Republic radio show, and then tomorrow I'll also be talking on Truth Talk Radio, men and women that served in our military, because I believe this information is extremely vital for them, and especially their families. As I always stated, I have nothing to gain, and I don't make a profit from this. This research belongs to the American people and not to me. So I want to have as many Americans out there that are willing to support me to